right, so we're going to present today on brand awareness in a zero-click world. I'm Mandy Englert. I am the head of our higher education nonprofit group at Chakala. So I'm working through a lot of the strategy and a lot of the technical development pieces, really putting those together specifically for our higher education and our nonprofit clients. And I will pass it to Cheney.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Cheney Moore. I'm the Director of Client Success at Jacala. I am also a Stanford grad and former staffer, so I have been forcing poor Mandy to walk around campus all day while I went, that didn't used to be there, or I can't believe that's still there. Jacala is a digital agency some of you might know by our former name, FFW. We've been working with Stanford for a very, very long time. And so we are delighted to be back on campus to talk today about something that hasn't been around a long time, which is LLM search. So you guys have probably heard a lot of these terms being thrown around, SEO to AEO to GEO to answer engines and all that kind of stuff. So we are going to go through a little bit of sort of the history and growth of what we're seeing in search trends today as it relates particularly to AI and LLM search. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the best ways to position your site, your unit, your organization to be found in search. Because, one thing we know from being at Stanford is that Stanford University itself does not have a lot of trouble being found, but many of the units within Stanford, of course, are always looking for greater visibility to your core audiences, right? So I used to work at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies, and we were always looking to be, found alongside the experts at, the Brookings Institute and the Harvard Belfer Center to talk on international issues of the day. So we have found this is really relevant for a lot of our higher education partners and clients. So hopefully you will find it of use today. Come over here and just go. There we go. All right. So I'm going to stand on this side. Sorry. So most of us have been working with this equation, right, since we started working with content on websites, right, which is it's not quite if you build it, they will come, but it's more if they can find you, that is the way you're going to get the most engagement. If you are visible, then people will come to your site, right? So you need to be found so that once you are found, people will come to you. We are no longer working with that equation, right? Visibility may very well exist still. That does not necessarily transmit to traffic anymore, right? So what we are finding in our own work with a lot of other clients across a variety of sectors, including higher ed, is that you are not competing for clicks anymore. Essentially, you are competing to be included in the answers that are provided by an answer engine. You are competing to be understood by the various AI systems that users are now relying on increasingly to get answers to their questions that you hope to be included in, right? And critically, you are trying to figure out a way to influence the decisions of those users before they ever click onto your site. So one of the critical questions our clients are asking themselves right now is, where do you show up in this new environment? So I'm not going to spend too much time going through the history of this. I'm sure everyone here knows it fairly well, but anybody here remember before ChatGPT, Google's like multitask unified model? Yeah, I didn't think so. Didn't catch on, which I think might have had something to do with the name. But before ChatGPT was a thing, Google actually had sort of a prototype of this that provided a lot of the same services, right? So it was designed to take queries and return answers in natural plain language. It could search multimedia. It could search in different languages and return the answer in the user's language. It was sort of an early stage of the types of LLMs that we see today. But chatbot really sort of blew everybody up when it came on the scene in 2022. And of course, you have a lot of competing products that were kind of hopped on the bandwagon right around the same time, like hurrying out to market. Basically, the history of this, at least to me, says that, once ChatGPT hit the scene, you have the search giants going, oh, we got to make one of these products too, right? And so you get Bing Chat, and you get, before Google Gemini, it was Google Bard. And they were saying, okay, we need one of these types of products. We need an LLM like bot, something you can talk to. And then at some point, it became clear that actually, like, people were not necessarily abandoning traditional search, but an AI result could really enhance it. And so that's when you start to see Google's AI overview appear at the top of search results. And around this time is sort of when everyone realizes that AI engines are not just being used for, I don't know, helping you with your homework or with that report you need to turn in or with coding. People are asking it questions like, what university should I consider going to if I want to major in art? Or what's going on with the war in Iran, et cetera, et cetera. And so we've had this kind of convergence now, essentially, of AI for search, in which ChatGPT has now included all the Search GPT features in its primary interface. And you have Google rolling AI out, integrating it into the search engine in such a way that you can have it a little bit integrated, or you can have it completely integrated with AI mode. So essentially, what the market is seeing over these past few years is that people really want to get answers to their questions without necessarily going through a list of website results, especially the younger generations. So one thing that stood out to me when I saw this graph, and this is a survey of like US and UK users, is that we're not at a point yet where like AI search is taking over all of search, right? So for these, the blue here is traditional search, so your Googles and Bings of the world. This is AI search. Green is social media, and like yellow is e-commerce. So there's still a pretty significant diversity of search sources that organizations have to think about, especially in higher ed, if you are trying to, bring students into a particular program. They're looking at a lot of places besides traditional search. So AI search is not quite taking over yet, so don't give up on everything else, but it's growing really fast. So this is a Gartner chart that sort of shows the growth of AI queries from 2023 up through 2025. As you can see, it's not quite a hockey stick, but we're not too far off of that pattern. It's growing, and it shows really no signs of slowing down. One thing that we notice in particular, AI searches are significantly more personalized, right? So from 2022 onwards, this dark blue here is the typical sort of short keyword queries that we are accustomed to typing into Google, like things to do San Francisco, that get us a list of web pages in return. And those are the things that many folks are accustomed to bidding on if you're doing paid media with like Google ads or things like that. Those are the keywords that you might be bidding on. The AI searches, these lighter blue here, much more personalized. That's a lot more likely to be something like, I'm going to be in San Francisco at the beginning of May. I like to do these things. What do you suggest I go do for fun? So the challenge and opportunity here is that more and more users are getting much more detailed information without ever clicking through to anyone's website. So this is the percentage of zero-click searches going up from 2020 up through 2025. And again, we expect to see that number continue to rise as these models get more sophisticated and they get more successful at answering the exact types of questions that users want them to answer. And I would say as a side effect, as Google search results and Bing search results get worse. So we've definitely seen a trend also of when you do sort of the more traditional keyword search, a lot of the results that you're getting out of the traditional search experience are not as valuable as they used to be. Fortunately for us, this is not all bad news. It sounds a bit daunting, especially if you have organized your entire website communications outreach marketing strategy around clicks. If that is how you are measuring the success of your initiatives, or indeed the success your or your team's job performance, that might be a little bit unnerving because people are not clicking as much as they used to. But what we are seeing so far, the preliminary data that's coming back, is suggesting that the ones who do click are much more likely to engage with your site in a deep way and to convert. If you have conversions, as in someone signs up for a program, or they sign up for your newsletter, or they want to attend an event, whatever that might be. What we're seeing just early stages is that an AI visitor could be up to 4 times as valuable for you as the standard search user. Because essentially, if someone is using AI search to get basic information about your program, your service, your institution, your unit, if they continue to come and visit your site after that, it means they're interested in what you have to offer. And they are more likely to engage with what's happening on your website than the casual user who may click because you're high up in the search results, skim it, maybe they see what they're looking for, maybe they don't, maybe they bounce again. So if they've had a chance to do that very casual browsing and information gathering in an LLM search engine, and they still come to you after that, they are likely to be a more engaged user with your site. So this is a paradigm shift that we are not likely to come back from. One of the things we are really seeing is the growth in informational queries, especially when it comes to, this is a stat particularly related to the AI overviews in Google, right? So these are the questions that are like, what's happening in the world right now? What's going on with my favorite celebrity? Like, what was this thing I heard about in the news? Or what was this thing I saw on TikTok? What's that about? Or information they need to fill out a paper for their homework or something like that. So the interesting trend that I feel like we are seeing here is that obviously you're going to have some suffering from like traditional news publishers, right? Because if people are asking what's going on with the war in Iran, they can get a very simple, like basic overview answer in AI overview without having to click through to the Washington Post, the New York Times, or any of the sources of information that AI overview is pulling from. So we have seen in the last 18 months, like over a 200% increase in news-related queries just in ChatGPT. So people are really already accustomed to going to ChatGPT and the other tools to get information about what's going on in the world around them right now, to get news. And so although organic traditional traffic to news sites is dropping as a result of this, ChatGPT itself is seeing its referrals to publishers increase because more and more people are going to ChatGPT for those answers. And then if they are interested in learning more, then ChatGPT will start referring them out to the news sources that provide those answers. So again, it's a shift in how we are accustomed to managing this, but it's not necessarily a shift in how much engagement you are going to get from your most valuable potential site visitors. So I'm going to talk briefly about sort of the differences between this and traditional search and how AI search functions, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mandy to talk a little bit about the solutions that we're seeing or the changes that we're seeing some of our clients and partners make in this space to make sure that they're keeping up with what users are expecting these days. So again, the takeaway for us here is, the way that users find and engage with you is changing, but the ultimate goal in having your website be out there as a place for users to find you is not changing. In other words, your goal here is still that when the user asks a question to which you want to be the answer, that you can make that connection, that they can find you, and that you can connect with them and they can engage with you in a way that's most valuable for them and for you. So basically, we're still trying to reach people here. We just have to reach them a little bit of a different way. So most of you probably know how search engines retrieve information, right? They crawl. They've got the Google's got its little spider out there. It indexes its own copy of the content, and then it ranks those pages based on Google's ranking algorithm as to which is the most quality. And of course, everyone knows search engine optimization as an entire concept was born specifically to figure out how to respond to Google's search ranking algorithm and figure out how to get pages up there, right? So the algorithm was always changing. There's a lot of conversation over the years and probably, dare I say, decades at this point as to how much of those changes were useful to the users versus being useful to Google for ad results and so on. But this is what every organization that wants to be found has been working with for the last, let's say, 20 years. I apologize for all the text on here. There's a lot happening, but so this is a little bit different. So basically, the way that an LLM search is going to provide information to your user, they start with their internal memory, right? So depending on the tool, they've obviously ingested data from all over the internet, from other sources that their providers, their makers may have put together. That's sort of its long-term memory, right? And again, it's predicting patterns, right? It's not, at that stage, it's not going out and surfing Google for you. It's pulling information from its own internal database. This is where hallucinations happen because in a lot of cases, the LLM is trained to give you an answer no matter what. And if it doesn't have one, it will make one up, which is why a lot of times you have to tell it, don't make anything up, which seems like the kind of instruction you shouldn't have to give a machine, but here we are. So after that, then you have the context window, right? And so that's basically the context it's pulling from your query, right? So if you give it more information, so instead of saying things to do San Francisco, you're saying, I'm going to be in San Francisco on May 1st. I really like outdoor music festivals, wine tastings, and softball. Is there any fun things for me to do around that time? Now it's using attention mechanisms to decide like what it should pull from your query and what it should return as a result. The limitation on this is that depending on how you have your LLM search set up, this is temporary, right? So unless you go back to that same prompt later, it won't necessarily remember that those are your preferences going forward. And then the last step is the action layer, right? So in this particular case, the search tools are designed so that when they have a knowledge gap, they will then go out. That's when they start actually going out to sites and looking for the information that they don't already have in their internal memory. So this is where organizations need to be found because it's putting out a query to whatever sources it's been told to look for. So in most cases, we're still searching the regular old internet. And then it's putting all of those things together to give you not a list of results, but an answer, a specific, clear answer, which users love and appears very authoritative, but also they are relying on whatever judgment calls, you could say, the tool is making to decide what's important, what's the best answer to this question. I mean, best entrepreneurship programs, it's pretty subjective, right? But it's going to give you an answer that it says, like, this is what I, Claude, think the best entrepreneurship program is based on, the inputs that I have. So basically the difference here that we see in sort of output is indexing versus interpretation, right? So the traditional search engine is designed to essentially to give you a list of potential sources for your answer and kind of let you decide which ones you want to look at, and which ones you find credible. The AI agent is designed much more to just give you an answer. And it sort of requires you to interrogate it a bit if you want to push on any of its conclusions or what it's done. So this is much more efficient for most users, right? Like if you're looking up, let's say, I'll give you a good example. Actually, just today, Mandy and I were out walking around on White Plaza, and there's a thing going on right now, and I'm guessing it's Pro for a weekend. I don't actually know. But I was like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on at Stanford today. And when I just did like a DuckDuckGo search for first I went to the stanford.edu events page and nothing could tell me why there was big welcome balloons out in White Plaza. And then I went to like DuckDuckGo, which is my search engine, and I literally typed in like what's happening at Stanford University today. Now the regular search results gave me just a list of Stanford event pages. Again, didn't tell me anything. And then I had to come back in here before I went to the AI search to see if it would actually give me the answer. But that's what I was trying to get, right? Like I wasn't trying to get a link to Stanford events page. I just wanted to know what's going on in White Plaza that's got balloons everywhere. And why are there extremely young people running around? College students can't possibly be that young now, can they? Right? Okay. I want those all to be high schoolers because they look like babies. Anyway, so the point of this being, this is much more convenient and streamlined and smooth for users. But the AI is making a judgment as to what content goes in here that is going to be the most useful and appropriate for them. And the question for organizations is going to be, how do you find yourself in here? If you are the right answer to that question, how do you make sure that you're going to show up in these answers? And to that, I'm going to let Mandy take over and talk through some solutions.
Awesome. Thank you. So, so we're going to talk about what drives some of the AI visibility. And I think what a lot of teams start with is they really go after volume. They say, I need to produce so much content. I need to have so much on my site. But that's really not always the best way to get the result. Volume, AI agents aren't seeing volume. What they're looking for is content that they can access, retrieve, interpret, label, be able to chunk. So I go through a framework with our clients that's kind of three-pronged here. And it really does take a cross-functional team to make all of this work and to really be ranked really well in AI search and AI engines and agents. So the first pillar being that recognition pillar, just trying to get those brand mentions, whether it be in forums, reviews, Wikipedia. That's really like that consistent brand visibility. So your key enabler here is your PR team. Typically, we don't see PR teams as much in the mix when we're dealing with marketing content and SEO and things like that. You know, they might be a little bit involved, but when we're looking at AI search and AI engines, PR can be really, really important here. The second piece is the presence piece. And this is kind of going back to what I was saying before with the volume. I feel like a lot of teams focus a lot of their time on this presence piece, where they're focusing on just the content on the site, what's being retrieved by LLMs. So making sure that you have FAQs on the site, the About Us section is really powerful, the home page, high intent pages. This is where a lot of people spend a lot of their time. They're creating that volume of content. And the last piece of this is that access and retrieval piece. So this is just making sure that AI systems can actually reliably be able to extract your data. So making sure that you have structured content on your site, schema, technical optimizations, any way that you can really be included into those search engines. And that's where the tech and IT teams come in. So all three of these things are very equally important. And that's what I always really like to get across to our clients is that this is really a cross-functional team. It's not really like one SEO person or a couple of SEO people doing these things. It is very cross-functional. So we're going to focus a lot on some of the technical pieces and the content pieces today. But if anyone had additional questions, we do have a lot of context around the PR and some more of the content stuff as well. So some of the technical areas that really impact LLM visibility, I just have this in kind of four areas here. So the first one being, can AI agents actually access your site? Can they get there? So that's really just validating that, rate limiting, CDN, monitoring logs, things like that. So that's really the first part. Can they even get to your site? The second part is, can they extract information from your site? So that's that retrieval layer. And that's where, you can break up the content into these really short, self-contained pieces using that clear hierarchy, content modeling. That's really that retrieval piece. The next piece is the rendering piece. So in the rendering layer, can AI agents access, can they see that information on the page? So they've gotten to the page, can they actually see it? So are you delivering your content in HTML? Is it coming through in JavaScript? You want to really avoid critical content that relies on JavaScript. And the last piece here is that labeling layer. So the interpretation layer is, can it label? Can you be able to label your content to help machines be able to find the information and understand the information, which I think is a really important piece because it's not just, the first three are about finding, retrieving it, but this last piece is really important because now it's found all of the information. Now you really want it to understand what you're trying to say. And that can be a very complicated piece with hallucinations and things like that. So we're going to dive into each of these four. So the first one here being that access layer. So this is where I see visibility break consistently. This is one of the things that we see across a lot of our client websites where, and it can be such a simple thing. I work a lot in higher ed, so there's a lot of security protocols. There's a lot of like extra security being put onto websites. But what happens is, what we're seeing is that our tech leaders are making sure that Googlebot can access the site really well, but not every AI agent works like Googlebot. So what ends up happening is that some of these other things look suspicious and then they get blocked. So you want to validate your bot mitigation rules, your rate limiting thresholds, IP filtering policies. So these are just some of the things to just kind of look for, because what happens is if they're not able to access the site, what you're getting is 404 errors to the AI bots. So they're seeing that your site isn't, informative. They're doing incomplete crawls. You have all this really reduced visibility. One of the things that I've seen, which is terrifying, is if Reddit, for instance, has information about, an MBA program that you have, and it has some information there. It could be correct. It could maybe not be correct. But then the website that has all of the information about the MBA program isn't able to be crawled by the AI agent. It's not even a source that's being crawled. So then what happens is Reddit becomes the source of truth for your university and for that MBA program in the AI agent. Now, again, this could be completely credible, completely correct information, but do I really want Reddit to be the source of truth for my brand? So that's why this access layer I think is really, really important. And something that you can do to validate that AI access, it's just going through your server logs. I know it's a huge pain, but it's probably the easiest way to validate. So just making sure that AI crawlers are reaching the site, like, identify those relevant user agents, make sure that they're able to reach. Are they being served successfully? So look to make sure that you're getting those 200s instead of 400s and 500s. Are they accessing relevant sections? So this is something I usually work, I'm more on the marketing side. So marketing teams are really looking at this piece and they're saying, oh, well, why is it crawling these and not these? So just making sure that it's accessing some of those relevant sections and then determining if requests are being blocked. And so those are the things that you really want to validate from that. And just keep in mind that these AI agents change all the time. We can't be 100% sure to identify them all the time. Unfortunately, that means that people are constantly looking at server logs to make sure that these are coming through. But it's just something to keep in mind. These do change. So again, log analysis can be very complex. There's a lot of data there. So sometimes we even use like generative AI to kind of help analyze some of these things. Though to a point, it definitely needs a human to look through it and make sure that you're seeing the right things, but it can sometimes help speed up the process. So the second piece here is that retrieval layer. So how the AI is actually extracting the content. What AI agents do is they're chunking your content. So it's not reading an entire page. It's not looking at all of the content there. It's looking at little chunks of content through the site. So it's splitting the web page. So this is something that we talk about a lot, even with SEO, is we want to make sure that we have clear hierarchy, short self-contained sections, using the right content types like FAQs and things like that to kind of help chunk things out too. Tables and bullet points, and just having some of that topic separation. Now, chunking is something that you can completely control. So you can look at how, AI is going to chunk your content. You can chunk your content for AI to help it do that piece of it. So then what that AI agent's doing is it's tokenizing those chunks. And this is the part that is automatic. It's model controlled. We don't have control over the tokenization of each of these things. So it's converting that text into, how it's processing. It's happening in the model itself. So I always tell people, really focus on that chunking, really focus on your content structure, because you're not going to control the AI agent. You're not going to be able to control the way that it's actually pulling that in and converting it and actually giving it to a user. So I find this piece really important because I think a lot of teams really focus on the tokenization piece and, oh, I want to make sure that they're getting this exact piece. It's not entirely controllable, but the chunking is. So it's a good step in the right direction. And a great way to do that is just with structured content. So AI systems really retrieve these things by being able to see relationships between all of your content on the site. They're not just looking at, one page on the website. They're looking for ways that they can find relationships between all of your content, understand all of your content, and then be able to extract the right thing for the user. So an example that I always use for higher ed is tuition and cost. It's something that is always like in the top nav. It's always a very generic page. It's always kind of like hidden up there. But then, when you really map cost and billing, you can find all of these other pieces. So when you're mapping all of these different relationships, it goes to financial aid, it goes to a specific program, it goes to outcomes, it goes to the ROI of the program itself. So these are all really important pieces that the AI agent really needs to understand to be able to answer a user's query. So if we use that MBA example again, if someone's going to an AI agent and saying, well, how much does the MBA program cost at Stanford? What's happening is it's going to try to find that tuition and cost page, and it's going to try to find all of the relationships that you can possibly have to the MBA. So this is why structured content really, really matters a lot. Having that structure, having that ability to reuse the content so that it can apply to each one of your programs, each one of the really important pieces on the site, you really want to develop those relationships, and structured content is sometimes the best way to be able to do that. Also, just making sure that you have clear taxonomy structures. Anything that makes it very easy for AI agents to extract that information is going to be really important here. So the rendering layer. So with traditional search crawlers, things like Googlebot, they are able to pick up JavaScript rendering. It's resource intensive. Even with SEO, we would say, be careful with this. It's not really going to pick up everything, but you might pick up some things. So, the client-side content could be processed by Google and other search engines, but not everything. Now with AI agents, JavaScript is not picked up at all. So it doesn't mean don't use JavaScript frameworks. We use them with decoupled architectures all the time, like Next.js. It just means make sure that your content in your HTML is rendered before the JavaScript fires. It needs to actually appear on the page as HTML. You need to be able to see the content before the JavaScript. If the JavaScript loads first and then the content loads, it's very likely that AI agents are not going to be able to pick it up, which can be scary because that's really an infrastructure piece that happens. So making sure that you have static rendering, especially when you're using JavaScript frameworks, is very, very important. And a way to really look for that, again, I work with a lot of marketing teams, so I'm usually helping them try to work with their technical teams, is just looking at the page source, making sure that when you open the page source, not just the inspector, but the actual page source, that you're able to see actual content really coming through. If you're able to see that content, that's definitely a way to do things. You can use curl to inspect raw HTML. You can also, in your browser, just disable the JavaScript and make sure that all of your content is actually appearing on the page. It might not look pretty, but you'll be able to actually see if everything's there. Because something that's really common is what I'll hear is, well, it looks great in the browser. Of course it's picking it up. It looks great here. But that backend piece, it matters a lot here, and AI agents might not be able to pick it up the same way. So lazy loading, that's another thing. Lazy loading was something that was heavily recommended during the SEO ages. And I feel like, content loads after that client-side API call. So we definitely recommend not using some of those type of things. Um, and the last one here is helping AI understand your content. So things like AI discovery files and discovery signals, LLMS.txt metadata, that can be really important here because it's highlighting those priority pages. It's highlighting those key sections. It helps reduce some of the noise for AI agents. So I really like to work with teams to figure out what are the most important pages on the site so that we can prioritize those in the discovery files. It doesn't mean that that's the only thing AI agents are going to pick up. They pick up pretty much everything, but it helps prioritize and just give it a framework of where to start. Another piece is structured data. So looking at the interpretation of FAQs, reviews, events, products, you can add structured data to all of those places. And then that content context, just making sure that you're consistently labeling, adding taxonomies to your pages, having those really clear relationships. That really helps label your content and gives AI a framework to really work from. So that's why I really feel like this piece can be really important because it's your labeling layer. It's just helping AI to actually understand what's important, what you're trying to say, and how to add those things to the site.
Hey, Mandy, there's a question in the chat. Is it all right if I say it?
Does it make sense to have separate view mode that renders pages as markdown specifically for LLM crawlers? I would have to probably ask someone on our dev team, but yeah, I would say making sure that you're rendering that markdown could be really important. And as long as that page is visible to those AI crawlers, I think that could work. I would be worried about any sort of like duplication or anything between sources. So I would probably have to ask someone on our technical team, but
Just a UX related response to that also is a lot of the recommendations that we're making for how to structure and organize your content to make it good for AI also make it good for users, much as traditional SEO does. Mandy and I are coming at this both from the communications side of this, and yeah, I would also want to defer to one of our more senior tech experts to give a canonical answer to that question. But in general, a lot of what we're finding is if your content is too confusing or unstructured for an AI bot to interpret it, that may also be having the same effect on your human users who come to the sites. It's something important to think about. And I think in the higher ed context in particular, we know that there's a lot of different teams and departments putting different types of information out about some overlapping topics. And that's a perennial challenge, but it's definitely one that's going to require addressing.
yeah, and I worry about breaking up the content. So that's my biggest thing with that question is breaking up the content there. It's just making it a little bit more difficult for AI bots to be able to crawl, but I'd have to actually test. I'd have to test it, but yeah. So our last section here is just going through like, how do you measure that AI visibility? This is one of the pieces that I think is really complex for teams to start to do because it really depends on, whether your systems are accessible, retrievable, things like that. And a lot of organizations now are seeing, oh, we're not seeing as much traffic. It's just because of AI agents, we know that, so we're just not going to track it. But just because your traffic's going down doesn't mean that there's no way to really measure that. So being able to measure visibility in this new world that we live in, we break it down into 3 categories. So we have the AI visibility, and this is really where your new key metrics are really coming from. Are you showing up? Are you being referenced? Are there citations that you're being able to pull from and that you're being added to? The next piece is that search visibility. This hasn't changed much. This is really that organic traffic, organic clicks, that share of voice across some of these key topics. And the last one being the business impact. So how is this all impacting your business? So engagement on key content, is it moving towards those conversion actions? As Cheney was saying earlier, more people that are hitting your site are more likely to convert because they've already done a lot of that search. They're already done a lot of that research up front. Now they're coming to your site to move towards those conversion actions. So it's really important to be able to track those pieces more now than ever. And some of the key metrics for AI visibility, this is where you're measuring how your content is actually included in the AI agents. So SEMrush has a really good metrics. It actually uses these ones really well. I would say Conductor, HubSpot AI visibility, that's a really good tool. That's free. Gumshoe.ai, that's one I use a lot. So these are some of the metrics that you can really use, and there's a lot of tools out there that can really start to help you track some of these things. So citation rate, referral traffic, share of voice. Again, these aren't going to come up standard in GA4. So it's something that you need to go and test against AI agents, understand what queries are important to your business, and then be able to kind of move that either into a tool or be able to track those things manually. And then connecting that AI visibility to impact. I find that this is one of the hardest pieces. I find a lot of organizations, again, I work with a lot of higher ed. A lot of what I hear is, oh, our traffic went down. Our leadership doesn't think, we're doing the right work now because our traffic went down. And, it looks like we're failing, but we're not failing because we know it's AI. So it's being able to connect those new metrics to what you're actually doing on the site. So it's adding those things in and telling that story from start to finish. Understand that demand, like how many people are actually trying to find you in AI search? Are people trying to and not able to find you? So these things are really, really important to tell the story so that you can actually figure that out, like for leadership, putting that into your dashboards, driving those measurable outcomes. So like I said, we could have probably gone on about this forever, and we could have gone through all three of those steps with like PR and content teams too. So today we really focus on just the technical things. A place of where to start, I really like to say, start with building that cross-functional team that's really going to be looking at all of this, looking at the AI agents together, really having your PR, your content, and your technical teams working together. Some of the things that I really recommend first, because again, if they can't retrieve the content, if they can't see the content on your site, they're not going to, no matter how much volume of content, no matter how many brand mentions you have, it's not going to do anything unless it can retrieve. So that's why I find this to be one of the really important steps. So just validating the access, identifying some of those gaps and those priorities, and building that scalable foundation. So implementing those structured content models, implementing schema, consistent architecture overall. So yeah, that is what we have.
Sean Keegan had a comment in the chat from the previous question.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sean. There would be a separate view for assistive technology user. Biggest problem is that you ended up with two versions of the site and content. Yeah, so the two versions was the thing I was a little bit worried about too.
That doesn't ding you for like in regular SEO crawls.
Well, the duplicate content would. That's why I was a little bit worried about was duplicate content, but
then you have this, they're right, there's two places you have to make content now.
yeah, so that too. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks so much. I'm wondering, I think one of the issues we've had in the past was cached content, so slightly out of date content. But then with AI, content can be so much more disconnected from accuracy. And so I'm wondering if you have any advice on how to structure, tag, signal the longevity and how long content is accurate and relevant for.
So yeah, definitely working through like your robots file. That's always definitely a good way to be able to show the longevity. I was gonna say those AI discovery files. There are different ones. I usually just use like the llms.txt, but there are like if you were to search for like AI discovery files, there's a lot of different ones that you can use in there, especially if you're changing some content, you're caching other content all of the time. There's different ways that you can represent that too. As far as labeling content, I would say being able to have that structured content model and having really important information really appearing on like intent focused pages, just having like references and links and things like that to those pages through that. Also the homepage, something that I find with like AI agents now is that something that we never used to do during the SEO ages is focus on your homepage, focus on the about us page. These pages that are usually there as just kind of, you know, extra are really important now because that's how AI is really prioritizing and saying this is the most important thing because these are the most important things that are actually being said to our users today. So those are things that I really look at for that longevity is just that interlinking strategy and then making sure I'm labeling properly. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just to add to the part about the homepage strategy in particular, I think this is a good illustration of the changes between how we see sort of traditional user-driven Google search and AI search, right? So when I was at the Freeman Spogli Institute here at Stanford, we determined that 92% of our traffic was coming through searches for our most well-known faculty, right? People were searching for Condi Rice, Frank Fukuyama, Mike McFall, Larry Diamond. Only 8% of our traffic was going through the homepage. And so we made different decisions about, site structure, content structure, and wayfinding based on that piece of information. And we actually paid a little less attention to the homepage because that wasn't where our users were. It actually gave us a little bit of flexibility to sort of, I would say, satisfy some like internal requests because, of course, that was important to our faculty, like making sure their new research was being featured on the homepage, things like that. That was critical to them, even though users were not necessarily driving towards that. But now AI will look at that and say, oh, this is the stuff that this organization thinks is important. It's that attention mechanism. So when I'm deciding what information to pull from the site to give to a user who may be searching about a relevant topic, now AI is saying, this is the stuff that you think is important, and so I'm going to feed it to my users, whereas before the users were like, I don't care what's on your homepage, I'm looking for this one thing, and they would go straight to it. So I think to Mandy's point, the homepages are back.
I had a quick question. You mentioned something about the lazy loading functionality. Can you talk through that again? The type of impact, what does it impact negatively? I think that's what I heard. So I just want to get clarity on what you said.
Yeah, so AI agents, when they're crawling a page, it really needs to be the first thing that it's seeing, the content on the page. So if the JavaScript is rendering before the content itself, what's happening is AI won't pick that stuff up. Whereas we used to try to do that to kind of help like, page speed and things like that. That's something that AI agents won't pick up at all now. So it really, you have to have the content load before any JavaScript, unless you don't care about that content. But any really important content really needs to do that.
So I have a kind of weird backwards question. What about content that we want publicly accessible on the web, fully accessible, but we don't want to get in AI training models? What are some ways to make sure it doesn't without like putting it behind a login wall or something like that?
Put it in JavaScript. No. Add JavaScript before it. You could. But I was going to say how you would block like search engines like Googlebot and things like that, you would follow that same sort of protocol. Also, you can actually block AI agents from certain pages in like your server logs and things like that, just like you would allow things like a Googlebot or really looking at those type of pieces. You can do that as well, like just be able to say like, you know, block this section or of the site. I personally use like robots.txt quite a bit. It usually abides by that. I can't say that it always. Yeah, it's, you know, it's as respected as search engines actually respect it, which, you know, so there's times where, you know, there's been entire lawsuits where Googlebot had actually like gone and crawled sites that, you know, it was told not to crawl. So it's ways that you can help prevent it. I don't think there's ever like a clear, you know, understood way. Yeah. If it's really important, put JavaScript in front of it. No, I shouldn't say that. That's not the best way to handle things, but it's just that it's basically just trying to make it inaccessible. So yeah.
There's another chat question.
So one of the hardest things right now for us is sorting through the tooling landscape. There's a lot of products claiming how they can detect our content and how that performs against different LLMs, answer engines, high value prompts. What criteria would you use to evaluate those tools? And are there categories of measurement that are genuinely useful now? And things that are too unstable and speculative. Yeah. So some of the tools that we use internally, I would say like SEMrush, I think is a really good one. Conductor is also a really good one. HubSpot has some really good tools too. I would say, yeah, and honestly, like I look for tools that are able to compare multiple agents at a time. I don't just want to see what the Chat GPT bot is doing. I want to see what each one is doing up against each other. We actually did a report for a client recently that was really interesting because they were highly ranked and highly rated with Gemini, but no other agent. So, which was really interesting. And we were trying to kind of figure out like why Gemini instead of some of these other AI agents. So that's something that I really look for in my tooling is how accurate some of that information is. I would say most of the tools out there are really going to focus on that AI visibility piece and not as much on those second two pieces. So I think that's something to really be aware of and really track towards, because when you're thinking about AI visibility, that's one piece of the equation. That's why we break it down into the three, where it's like the AI visibility, the search visibility, and then the business impact, is because each part is really important and no one tool can do all three of those things. So you really have to kind of use multiple tools at a time. It shouldn't just be one tool that you're using to find all of the things. But I would say some of the better tools that I have found out there, and again, to each their own, but some of the better ones, SEMrush, Conductor, those are the ones that are more publicly available. We have proprietary.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have our own also, but we usually use a mix depending on the client. So yeah, I mean, to answer the question, when we do this work on behalf of clients, because we do work with clients at the sort of the discovery strategy stage to be like, what types of tools, of AI tools should you incorporate into your organization? We do start a lot with sort of some fundamental questions about like, what are you trying to accomplish? And what are your sort of like organizational constraints and that sort of thing. So when we try to help our clients make decisions about choices of tools, it always starts from this question of, what do you really need them for, right? As opposed to saying like, we need to throw AI at this because everyone else is doing it and we have to be doing some AI. Leadership says we have to AI stuff. We really do focus a lot more on like, what are the specific things you're trying to achieve? Different tools work better for different types of goals. And we have a team that are experts in this that would come back to us and say, well, for this specific use case, for this type of organization, this size of organization, this sector, with these goals and these particular types of either privacy constraints, budget constraints, technical constraints, whatever that might be, you sort of feed all that together. So sometimes it can help to get an outside opinion, but if that's not in the cards for you, then really the recommendation would be to like think about what your needs are, what you're actually trying to accomplish, like who's your type of audience that you want to find you through LLM search. And then from there, you have the ability to start looking around for the types of tools that serve that particular need. So like a tool that will increase that like wants to focus on your findability for like new leads for a student program might be different from one where you're trying to increase your sort of your like research institute's brand awareness amongst members of the media and like policymakers and that kind of thing. So you've got different goals.
Focusing on queries rather than keywords. I find that really important. Like I see a lot of organizations struggle with like moving from that keyword mindset to a query mindset. So some of the tools still really focus on keywords. So I really kind of try to encourage people to kind of move towards queries and think about things that way. You know, it's hard for me to pick like a tool set just off the top of my head because to your point, it really does depend. But I would say like having one tool for each one of those categories. So like the AI visibility has a tool that you really rely on for that piece. The search visibility, I almost exclusively use GA4 for that, but being able to kind of see some of that and then the business impact with your CRM, looking at how all three of those things fit together, I think is really important.
Anyone else here or online? Good job. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, everyone.